So have you ever asked yourself or wondered, how does the internet work? How are websites created? What's the magic behind it? Well, in this video, I'll be telling you everything you need to know about the World Wide Web, the internet, and everything you need to know about the fundamentals and the basics of web development. I go by the name of Koketso Fresh, and welcome to Billionaire Developers. Okay, what's up guys? Welcome once again. So today I'll be talking to you about web development fundamentals, right? I'll be telling you about the front end, back end, and full stack, and everything in between. So let's jump straight right into it. What are we going to be covering today? Obviously, the simple introductions. Then I'll be talking about what exactly is the World Wide Web. Then what exactly is web development, and we'll be taking it all the way back in terms of looking back, how did web development actually all start. We'll be talking about what front end development is, what back end is, and eventually we'll be talking about what a full stack developer is and doing the final closing. So guys, let's not waste any more time and jump straight into it. If you're new to this channel and you're asking yourself, what is Billionaire Developers all about? Well, it's all about you. This platform, it's basically a global tech and an AI community based channel where we'll be talking about all things tech, all things AI, all things coding, all things gaming as well. So if you're interested about learning how to code or learn about AI, learning about gaming, then this is the channel for you. So make sure that you like, you comment, and you subscribe. So, and you're asking yourself, who is this guy? My name is Koketso Fresh, and I am the founder of Billionaire Developers. I'm as well as the senior tech lead, as well as the tech content creator on this channel. Some of my accolades is that I'm a 4-time AI certified software engineer. I'm an international speaker and mentor, and I've worked alongside and also partnered with Google, Microsoft, IBM, AWS. The list is ended. But this is not about me. It's about you guys. So let's talk about what exactly is the World Wide Web and the internet. So let's look at the web architecture for a second, right? So looking at this image, I want you guys to understand that it's not all complicated and it's not scary as it seems, right? So let me first tell you how the internet works. Let's say, for instance, if you look at your area, your neighborhood where you stay, right? There's houses and there's streets, right? And think about that each house is a different website. So for instance, let's take 3 houses for example. We have Google, we have YouTube, and we have Facebook. We can even add Instagram, okay, of course. So you need to remember that each one of these actually live on a certain road, which we would call the internet, right? Now, you as the user, for instance, if you are using your phone, if you're using your laptop, using your PC to actually log onto the internet and you're searching for a certain website, right? Let's say you're going for google.com. Whatever you're using on your device, it's what we call the client, which is technically called the client side, right? And then we have something called the server side. So think about YouTube, think about Instagram, think about Facebook. All of those are called server side, right? So we have the client side, which is you as the user, you are using your PC, right? And then we have the client side. Now, how do they actually communicate with each other? First and foremost, we need to understand that there is always a communication between the two. Now, the client, every time you type in to the website on the internet, www.google.com, there is something called a request that is sent from the client side. So you as the user are sending a request over the internet, and what it does is that it then reaches the server. And what the server does in that aspect is that, oh, okay, you're looking for google.com, and it'll go to the first house, and what it will do is whatever information that is there, right? If you're looking for information, for pictures, for documents, right, what Google will do is then send something called a response. And whatever you like type, you want cats for instance, and you see pictures of cats, what happened in the background is you sent a request to Google, and what Google then said is that, oh, you're looking for cats, and what we are now doing is we are sending a response of cats. So that's why you will see images of cats. Right, so I'm hoping you guys understanding that it is sort of like a cycle between the two, right? So me as the user, I'm on my phone or on my PC, I'm typing www.youtube.com, and And then I go to YouTube, and then what it then YouTube then sends a response, and then you're like, okay, since I'm on YouTube, I want to watch videos about coding, right? And what it then says, you send another response, and what then YouTube then does is that it searches. So in the searching stage, let me then talk about the server side. What the server then do, they mostly connect it to like a database. So it could be a cloud database, it could be like a physical database, right? And that's why you will see a lot of servers are actually placed in all over the country or all over the world, so that you can actually get these informations. So what then YouTube would do is that it will simply run a search throughout their databases, and it will give you videos with a response to say, hey, this is exactly what you were looking for. So in a nutshell, moving forward, I will be obviously teaching you guys more about the in-depth of how the web architecture really works. But what I need you to understand is that that's exactly how the internet communicates, right? So you have client side, you have servers, and clients will always send a request in terms of what I need, and then the servers will always give you a response in terms of what you asked for, right? So you're asking yourself, what exactly is web development? And let's look at some of the technologies and definitions. So web development is basically the process of creating, building, and maintaining websites and web applications that run on the internet, right? So think about YouTube, for instance. You as a web developer, you'll be actually responsible for everything that happens on that website. So think about every single website you've been, or every single website that is out there, it has to be built by a web developer. And obviously there is a process in terms of building these websites. Some websites are much more easier to create than others, and some are much more complicated, but the whole essence of it all is that web development is just the creation, the building, and the maintaining of how these web applications actually work, all in all, over the internet. Now, why is web development so important nowadays? Why does it matter? Like, why do we need web developers? Because at the end of the day, if there was no web developers, there won't be any websites. Then there won't be a need for the internet. I mean, that's the reason why we have the internet, is because we want to be accessing all of these websites. Obviously, it will be either through listening to music, either making research, or we have thousands and thousands and a plethora of reasons why we use the internet today. So it really powers the modern internet. Every single site and app is hosted on the internet. Second of all, it is a very high demand in terms of careers, guys. Whether it be whichever country you are in, web development will always be a high priority. You can have a global market, you can have a regional market, you can have a national market. Web development is needed everywhere. Another one is that it's very creative and it's very technical. Looking at, which side of web development you're looking at. On the creative side, obviously the front end is where you'll be looking at a lot of the creative side of things, and then obviously in the back end, well, there's the server side, is the more technical side of things. And also it is a fundamental thing for AI engineers, right? So in my previous video, I spoke about becoming an ultimate full stack AI Python engineer, right? So web development is quite necessary, and because you need fundamentals of understanding the web. How does the web work? How to build these websites? Because as an AI engineer, you will then obviously incorporate it with AI features, so such as chatbots or voice assistants. Some interesting facts, all right? So every year, web development is actually growing like 7% globally, meaning adding 15,500 jobs every single year. And this is like a huge demand. And the current salaries, it ranges from 70 all the way to 130k. This is depending on region, company, but guys, I don't know about you, but this for me sounds like it's a very good deal, and it actually is a very lucrative industry. And a very fun fact is that there are less than 2% of web developers all over the globe. If you take the whole population of the world, there's less than 2% that are web developers. So you can see that it is a very good chance for you to actually land an opportunity, because there's not many of us, right? So now let's look at some current job titles that you can get into as a web developer. right? So I mentioned front end developer. This is the person that obviously will be designing and implementing the visual aspects of the website, right? So you'll be working a lot with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which I'll be talking to you right now in just a moment, right? And then we have a backend engineer. A backend engineer just works on the server side of things like databases, application logic, working with APIs, right? And then you have a full stack developer. This is the person that actually works both with the front end and the back end. Then you have a DevOps engineer. So this is the person that actually works with the processes, or the operations of how the website is going to be. So the website is now built, it's functional, it's ready. How are we going to deploy it? How are we going to maintain it? How are we going to keep security measured onto it? So DevOps engineer basically handle a lot of the shipping, the deployment, the maintenance, as well as if there's any issues in terms of network issues, right? And then we have an AI powered web developer. This is like a very, very interesting career path, because this is where we'll probably see websites or web developers now incorporating AI into it, right? So we're talking about taking AI features such as chatbots, such as voice assistants, that will be able to actually interact with the website. But now let's take it all the way back. Way, way, way back to where it all started. So in the early days, let's talk about the 1989s to 1991. This is where like the first website was built by Tim Lee, right? Using just basic HTML. It sounds pretty boring to me, but this is where it all started. Fast forward a bit later, HTML and browsers started communicating together, right? So this is where you could start hosting your HTML documents in that case onto the browser, because that's when the internet was born. Fast forward a couple of years later, close to like your mid 90s, this is where JavaScript was comes into play. So JavaScript helps with dynamic content. What does that mean? It just means it adds additional interactivity on your web pages, right? So in terms of things like transitions and effects, this is what JavaScript comes in. And then also this is also the same time as the rise of CSS. So CSS is also like one of the technologies that help you to change the look and feel, change the positioning, if you want things on the left, you want on the right, up and down. So this is where CSS is now also being born. Then we hit the early 2000s, right? This is where Web 2.0 comes in. So this is where the internet boom happens. So platforms like YouTube, like Facebook, all of these emerging, cool companies that we know today start emerging. Then we have a rise of responsive design, right? So back in the day, obviously, web development was only, based on web pages. So now, because we are living in the modern day and age, websites now can be accessed through phones, to tablets, to laptops, to PCs, to even big screens, right? So this is where responsive design comes in. It just basically plays with the variations of how does a website actually look compared to from a certain device to a certain screen, right? And then we fast forward into 2020s, the current trends. So this is where the popular trends like your Reacts, your Angulars, and your Views start emerging more, because this is now the frameworks and the architectures that actually help to shape and build single page applications. And then looking into the future is, as I mentioned, introducing AI, right? So we'll be having a lot of now AI first websites, right? So this means that the AI will be able to communicate with you to give you more information about what the website is all about. So this slide basically is just an interesting slide just to see, how computers look like them back in the day. I mean, if you can look at that, computers used to fill halls, just to complete certain tasks. I mean, look at the, websites back in the day. It was just simple, boring, CSS and HTML, which without any, modern day styling, right? So now let's talk about what exactly is front end, right? So basically, front end development refers to the practice of creating the visual and the interactive aspects of a website or a web application that the users interact with directly, right? So everything you see on a website, right? Whether it be pictures, colors, sounds, or video. This is everything that the front end engineer actually does. Make sure that the client side, as the user, interacts with the website. Certain transitions, the way we scroll down, the way we, so they kind of responsible of how actually that looks. So let's look at some key components of a front-end engineer. Now, there are three very, very important component technologies that you actually need to know. Is that number one, HTML, which is basically hypertext markup language. What HTML does is basically it's the backbone of every single website. Every single website is built on HTML, right? But HTML actually provides like the structure and the layout by defining certain elements like the heading, the paragraphs, and links. So what do I mean by that? Think about it like a human, right? So HTML would basically be like your skeleton body, right? You don't see your skeleton, but they the reason why we have structure, right? So we have shoulders, we have elbows, we have arms, we have knees, we have hips. That's what HTML actually does. It structures everything in place. Then we have CSS, which stands for Cascade Style Sheet. So this is where the interesting stuff happens. You add your color, you add your spacing, you add, so making sure that everything is actually all in proportion. So think about it. If I am, as a human, compared to CSS, would be the clothes that I wear, right? The caps that I wear. It's adding a look and feel to it. Then we have JavaScript. So JavaScript is more like a scripting language that just adds interactivity between your pages, right? So things like, if I'm clicking a certain button, what does this button do, right? So for instance, in a human, how does the human body work, right? So different people have different walks, people have different hand gestures, people speak differently. Think about JavaScript like that. It just adds more functionality to it, so it can handle things like animations, transitions. You can add like form validations, but also real-time updates. Now, what are the responsibilities of a front-end engineer, right? So first and foremost, you are responsible for the design implementation. So what that means is that you'll be working maybe with a designer, with a client that wants a certain website, right? So they'll typically give you like something called a markup, or or wireframe, and you are responsible for now taking that idea and transitioning it into a website, right? So you will definitely, that's why it's very essential for you to really understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You then have to also know about user experience. What that means is that you need to now put yourself as the developer into the user itself. So the client, the customer that will be using this website. Am I trying to make a payment? Am I trying to watch a movie? Am I trying to, make an order, right? You need to now think about that processes and make sure that the user experience matches exactly to what you've implemented. Then we have performance optimization. This simply means, how quickly does your website run on the internet? We all know that slow websites tend to become boring, because it means you have to wait for things to load, you have to wait for information to be processed, and obviously that is a time killer. So we need to make sure that we optimize our code, and we make sure that everything is actually runs as fast as possible. Then another one is cross browser compatibility. So every website needs to, for you to actually access a website, you need to actually have a browser. So this means your Google Chrome, your Firefox, your Safari, but your website needs to make sure that it actually follows all those protocols, so that each and every browser can actually accommodate your website. Now, some popular tools and frameworks when it comes to front end, it's React, which was actually developed by Facebook, and you have Angular, which was developed by Google, and we have Vue.js. But in my opinion, I would obviously say that I would go for React. If you really want to go into like a full-time front-end engineering role. Right, so we're done on the front end, the client side. Let's talk about the back end, right? The server side of things. So back-end development refers to the server side of a web application, where the logic and the database interactions and the server configurations take place, right? Remember, so I spoke to you about on the server, this is where all of the responses come from, right? So working with databases, working with APIs, working with all of these security measures, right? So this is all done on the backend. Right, so backend development also builds and runs the server-side systems that power the web application, handling the data, the business logic, security, and the scale, and is essentially for an AI-enabled product that you can plan to deploy from anywhere else. Right, so let's look at some key components when it comes to backend. Right, so obviously I mentioned server. So server, what technically the server means is that every time you go to youtube.com or google.com, right, that .com obviously it serves as like a housing mechanism to where every single website is. Remember I said, let's think about, your area, and Google and Instagram and Facebook actually stay on the same street. So that's exactly what is a server does, is that it hosts that certain websites there. Then you have server-side languages, right? So obviously you need to learn some sort of a server-side programming language, which popular ones are like Python, Java, CSS, C Sharp, Ruby on Rails, PHP. Then we talk about APIs, right? So API just stands for an application programming interface. Now, if you don't actually understand what an API does, let me give you a simple example. If you go to any restaurant, right, you take your seat and you actually, and you want to order your food. Now, let me give you a question. Is it your responsibility as a customer to go to the back of the kitchen and to ask the chef exactly what you want? And then once he's done, you then take your plate and you go sit down, right? It doesn't really work like that, because on the client side, which is the customer, you, and then we say the chef, which is the server side, who cooks the food, you as the customer are going to want to request food, right? And then obviously the chef needs to know exactly what you want for them to actually prepare your meal and then to give it to you. This is where APIs come in, sort of like the waiter in this situation. The waiter then obviously plays the role of delivering the message between the client and the server, right? The waiter then is the one that will communicate your order to the chef. That's exactly what an API does. It's just a middle person that actually does the up and down, the hard work in this sense. Though the API, so the response and the request travel through something called an API. Then we have databases. So a database is basically, it's a storage unit or a storage system that basically, stores all of this information. Have you ever wondered, why does YouTube have so many videos? Why does Google have so many information or have access to all of these websites? It's because they have a dedicated database where they can be able to outsource and grab all of this information. Right. So some of the responsibilities now that come as a backend engineer. So I mentioned databases, right? But we need to know how to manage these. So we need to know how to design them, how to implement them, right? So whenever you go to Facebook and you, for instance, you type in your friend's name, Facebook needs to know that, okay, in our database, is there someone called Koketso Fresh, right? And then once they are there, they'll be able to pull information on him. Or for instance, if I'm looking for a video on coding, right, you go to YouTube, and what you do is that I'm trying to search for Python, or I'm trying to search for Django, I'm trying to search for AI. And what does YouTube do? It then goes into its database and actually searches for its information to actually give it back to you. Then we have server logic. So basically server logic is just thinking about how exactly does the back end actually get the information, right? Are we talking about processing data, handling requests and responses, how to deliver the responses to the front end, right? Then we have authentication and security. So this is basically like who is allowed to do what at certain points, right? So first and foremost, we need to verify, are you the person that is logging on? So whenever you're logging onto something, right, logging onto Gmail, onto a certain account, or your banking details, right, well, the first thing we'll ask you is you need to log in, and we have to make sure that you have the right credentials to actually prove that, oh, okay, this is the right person. Then we have authentication in terms of authorization, and authentication is that what exactly are you allowed to do in certain aspects, right? You can't just log in and then you start deleting other people's information onto the site, right? So so in that case, this is where we're dealing with very sensitive data. Then we have integration, right? So basically be able to connect your API from the back end and to the front end, or even making things like payments, right? This is where the functionality really comes in and draws it all together. And some of the popular frameworks right now, it's Django, which is from Python. We have Node.js from JavaScript. We have C Sharp. We have .NET, that is a C Sharp backend framework, and we have Spring Boot, which is a Java backend framework. Now, let's look at front end plus back end. That gives us full stack. I'm not sure how the name full stack comes in, but basically what technically full stack development refers to is the practice of working on both the front end and the back end of the web application, right? So full stack developers they possess like a very unique and a comprehensive skill, that allows them to manage everything from the user interface to the server side logic and database management. Now, think about literally everything I just spoke about right now, and you'll be able to do that, right? You'll be able to come up with the concept, create this website, build it all, connect it to a database or database, and then host it online and be able to manage it, and to making sure that the security measures are there, the optimizations are there, so all in that is exactly what a full stack developer is, right? And that's not more that's not all. You also need to make sure that you implement security reasons, making sure that hackers don't actually play around or maliciously damage your data. We have maintenance, right, to making sure that all your API requests are correct, your databases are not full, or you have the correct payloads when it comes to sending out responses. Optimization, right? Remember I spoke about making your website as clean and as quick as possible. How are you handling your request and your response? The type of data, is it like just images, videos, documents? So all in all of that, that's exactly what a full stack developer does. So in conclusion, we've reached the part of where we a segment where I call this the developers digest, where we sort of take a step back and we look at everything we've actually spoke about in today, right? And guys, if you've made it this far, please make that you like, you comment, and you subscribe. But don't just comment. How's about you tell me, what was your favorite part about this? Are you trying to look to be a front-end engineer? Are you trying to look into becoming a back-end engineer, or a full stack, or even an AI powered software engineer, right? I'd like to actually hear more about that, so drop that in the comments. Right, so the developers digest is front end, back end, and full stack are just different lenses on the same system. Choose the path that excites you, master the fundamentals, and keep building, because great developers aren't defined by a stack, they're defined by understanding. And that being said, guys, I always encourage you to always learn, always explore, always innovate, and always collab, and most importantly, build. That being said, guys, we've come to the end of the video. Please, please, please make sure that you do leave a comment, and let's continue the conversation, right? As I mentioned, what is your favorite part? What are you trying to do? Or have you learned something interesting? Make sure that you follow me on all the social networks. I go by the name of Koketso Fresh from Billionaire Developers, and I will see you in the next one.